What's up, everybody? We are back. John Delarose here, delarose.com. That's DELARROZ.com. You can head to the link in my description below, sign up for my newsletter, and get the first volume of Flying Sparks absolutely free. If you like Flying Sparks, you can head to my Indiegogo store, which has all the volumes, and finish up that series. I highly recommend it. I think it will be one of your top graphic novels if you check it out. Support indie comics and support the channel. I think you will enjoy. So thank you. So without further ado, this is my top 10 graphic novels of 2020. These are books that came out in 2020. I might do a separate what I read in 2020 because it is a different list. But as far as things that got released this year, these are my top 10. I think you'll be a little bit surprised, but you'll probably be like, oh, yeah, I forgot that came out once I get down to my number one. So this is fun stuff. Been reading a lot of graphic novels for the channel, obviously, and thank you guys for watching all the reviews and commentary and fun things like that. We're definitely all about positive comics here and making this industry into something a little bit better than it's been in recent years. And so I appreciate you guys being there, and I especially appreciate the readers who actually come through and read all the comic books that either I suggest or my books. So thank you guys. All right, without further ado, we'll get to my number 10. She-Hulk by John Byrne Omnibus. I wasn't sure about She-Hulk at first. I wasn't sure if I was even going to get it. And I just kind of got addicted to buying omnibuses. So this came out and I picked it up, and I love John Byrne's art so much. I thought he just did a stellar job. He made her look phenomenal and just awesome. And this book was so zany and fun, I just couldn't put it down. I read it in like one day, and it was just awesome. It's definitely one of those like parody comics. So they're parodying superhero comics. She breaks the fourth wall. This is prior to Deadpool, so it was actually kind of a new thing when he did this. And it just has a beautiful storyline, some wonderful science fiction elements to it that I think is worthwhile. You don't really need to know anything about She-Hulk or the Hulk or anything like that to read this. It's very standalone because of the way it's set up. And John Byrne definitely pays homage to comics and the comic creation process quite a bit in here. Also making fun of it quite a bit. Was so much fun. I absolutely loved it. All right. Next is Titan Mouse of Might. This is a book by independent artist and writer Gary Shipman. I got a beautiful hardcover of this. This came from an Indiegogo campaign. And it's just about this kind of, human anthropomorphized, is that the word? Yeah, anthropomorphized mouse who has his lady friend trapped in this like mouse experiment lab by this human scientist, and he's trying to get her out. Very compelling story. The art is absolutely beautiful. I love Gary's art, and it did have a cliffhanger. It didn't really resolve itself. I backed volume 2, which I think is still available, so you guys can go get that if you're interested. Wonderful indie comic. The presentation was just very, very well done. High recommendation. Next one, you might not have heard me talk about this lately, but Outer Darkness was one of my top comics of 2019. It's basically a Star Trek sort of scenario, but really twisted from the mind of John Layman. Artist on here is Afu Chan for the most part, and they do beautiful work together. I really thought our Outer Darkness was so much fun. It has an exploratory element to it where each issue made for a single adventure that kind of then compiled into something else. Unfortunately, the book got canceled. So Layman actually made this Outer Darkness Chew, because Chew is his main series, which has garnered him so much attention over the years. A really excellent series also. And this was kind of the last gap to try to make it not get canceled. And unfortunately, they canceled the book before this even came out. So a lot of people might have checked out and not seen this one, but the crossover actually really worked. I wasn't sure how well it'd go, but there was a time travel element with it, and it actually time traveled to before when Chew ended. I was wondering if they were going to do something with the way that original storyline ended, because there is a science fiction element to it, which I won't spoil for people who haven't read it. But well done. The crossover was awesome. I enjoyed myself a lot, and I highly recommend people pick this up. It's very short. I would get Outer Darkness first, I think. Maybe Chew first, too. But yeah, I don't know. As a person who loved both of these series, I was very happy to get this. Next one was one that was not on a lot of people's radars. This is called Jack Kirby's Dingbat Love. It was published from one of those small presses that is barely making it. And this is just rarities of Jack Kirby. So the Dingbats was kind of his attempt to revitalize the Newsboys Legion in the 70s. And then Jack Kirby also did some weird romance comics in the 70s because, of course, Kirby cut his teeth on romance comics in the golden age. And so this was kind of weird. The romance comics were not happy romance comics. He was kind of like highlighting negative romances. It was a very different sort of beast, and I could see why it got canceled right out the gate. But this collection really has a lot of cool stuff. You get to see some unfinished Kirby work, some stuff that hasn't been seen before, and it was very much worth the read. I was very happy to get this little piece of comic book history this year. Next up is Kamen America. This is another Kickstarter campaign, and as you can see, it's a superhero girl with giant heart. And this is by Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini, who are friends of the channel, I will say. But they did a beautiful job with this character. And her origin story, I'm commenting about her first book because these guys have been pretty productive, was actually something that was just really nice. It was a lighthearted superhero fare. Despite the cheesecake cover like this, it was actually a very wholesome book. And I really like that. They have very good values in there, very good heroic values. I always talk about, sort of the Steve Ditko versions of heroes and anti-heroes and how the industry's kind of changed in a negative direction. This is a sweeping, I guess, book that goes in the right direction. So very happy for this. I think the campaign for Volume 3 is starting in January. So definitely pick this up if you have not. Next one is kind of a surprise, Kyrie. And I didn't pick this up during the initial campaign, which is another Indiegogo book. There's 2 volumes of this right now, but this is a story of ancient Rome. And there's this hunt going on for this mysterious power that this one woman thief is kind of after. And then she meets up with some sort of odd renegades while, this Roman governor is really chasing after them. Beautiful setting. I think the art style is awesome. It's by a man named Matt Krotz. Sorry, Matt, if you're watching this. But a wonderful indie book. The presentation of this book was, again, awesome. It was done in one of those like really classy ways with these cool little book flaps that, opened up. And I think everybody should be reading cool indie comics like this. Again, this is on Indiegogo. I believe it's still available. If it's not, I'm sorry. Thanos the Infinity Saga Omnibus. I don't know what number I'm on at this point. I think I'm on number 4 of my top 10. So that would have been number 5 for Kyrie, but whatever. They don't matter. All of these are great. That's why they're on my top 10. So I was very excited for this coming out. Jim Starlin did all of these Thanos books, original graphic novels in like 2014, 15, 16, 17. And I'd never read them. I always saw them and I thought, maybe I'll pick them up, but I didn't. And this omnibus then got solicited. So I was like, wow, I'm glad I didn't pick them up. And I read through this all in one day, much like that She-Hulk thing. I've always really loved the Infinity Saga from the 90s. I thought it was a very underrated event. I know Crusade doesn't get as much love as the other 2, but it did really round out the trilogy pretty well. And this bringing Thanos and Warlock back and into their weird universe-ending perils in a new and fresh way was totally worth reading. I enjoyed it a lot. And, I don't know. I wouldn't say this is the perfect comic from a sort of craft perspective, maybe necessarily. But I had so much fun. I can't deny it. And I just love the cosmic stuff. I just love science fiction. That's what it comes down to. This has Alan Davis art for the most part. It's got some Ron Lim art. And I love Ron Lim art. It's a very severely underrated artist. And Jim Starlin actually does some of the art duties also. Number 3, we got Blade of the Immortal Deluxe Volume 1. This one took me a little by surprise. Dark Horse started putting out these deluxe editions of their comics, and they're just, again, got these like faux leather covers that look really awesome on the shelf. That's a big thing to me. I love it when these deluxe editions come out. It's got oversized art from the original manga. The art is so stunning in this. And I am a huge weeb, if you guys don't know. So this whole samurai Japan setting really nailed it for me. And I'm absolutely in love with this storyline. It is on the dark side. It is on the, I'd say, mature side. So there is some kind of gruesome stuff in it that you might want to be careful with around kids. But it is a beautiful book, and the storyline is wonderful. I can't wait for volume 2 next year. Wow, only one epic collection on the list. This was kind of surprising to me as I went through and compiled this, but there were just a lot of good books that came out this year that I read this year. And so only one epic collection made it. This is Fantastic Four Volume 5. The name is Doom. They came out with 2 Stan Lee and Jack Kirby epic collections this year for the Fantastic Four, which rounds out their run in its entirety. Volume 6 really went downhill in terms of the story. It felt like they were recycling plots. But Volume 5 is kind of the last of Kirby's like awesome hurrah, where you can tell he's still trying. There's some still cool elements with the Inhumans, cool elements with Doom, obviously. I love the Johnny and Crystal relationship building throughout all of this. It's just good stuff. I'd say that maybe Volumes 3 and 4 are slightly better, but this is still in that wonderful era where it's worth the read and some of the best comics ever made. Speaking of the best comics ever made, this is what I mentioned at the beginning of the video, where you might not have realized this came out this year, but this is Masters of Suspense, Lee and Ditko Volume 2 Omnibus. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Steve Ditko, if you guys watch the channel, and so this had all of his horror and science fiction and adventure stuff in an omnibus that was before the superhero age, before Spider-Man. It kind of wraps up towards the end of Amazing Fantasy 15, which there's backup stories in Amazing Fantasy 15. Spider-Man was not the only comic in there, that a lot of people don't realize. And those backup stories were just, short horror stories, and they're very interesting. So I enjoyed this one. I liked Volume 1 a little better because I think there was a little bit more variety in what was going on. I think they settled into a routine by this point for sales purposes. And this is kind of the end of an era, and the Ditko art is just absolutely stunningly beautiful. They restored the colors. Everything's so beautiful about this volume. I just want to read it over and over again. So this is definitely something to pick up, especially for people who are interested in, classic great comics. So that's my whole list. I hope you enjoyed that. All the YouTubers who make lists like this always say things like, oh, this is just my opinion, blah, 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 blah. I say the opposite. My opinions are better than everybody else's opinions and are stone cold fact. And if you don't agree, you are probably racist or something like that. So enjoy the video. I hope you like this. Please check out Flying Sparks, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. And thank you guys for tuning in again. I hope you've had a great 2020. I think it was a great year for graphic novels, especially all these old reprints of excellent material. And it looks like 2021 might be just as awesome. We'll see you guys soon. Thank you, and we'll be back.